for the opening remark. Without further ado, now I will invite Brian Tshuma. I will just introduce briefly his bio. Brian Tshuma is a trust and safety professional and lawyer in Zimbabwe. He served as member of the 6th and 7th Parliament of Zimbabwe, contributing to the Portfolio Committee on Information Technologies. Brian graduated from the African School of Internet Governance in the alumnus of both the Internet Society, Mercury Professional Fellowship, and the Internet Shutdown Scholars Program. Currently, he's conducting doctoral research at King's College, Digital Humanities, focusing on the governance of algorithm technologies in the Global South. And he's also associated with King's Institute of AI, and we will be speaking on Brian's topic would be approach to strategic litigation in internet shutdown. So it's a pleasure to have you, Brian, for this forum. You will have about 20 to 25 minutes to make your presentations. And if you have slides, you can, of course, ask Henok also to project the slides to the audience. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for making up time for this session so we can talk about the internet. I also wanted to thank President of the ISOC chapter in Ethiopia, Professor Azrat, for bringing together the different actors. I mean, it's a matter of multi-stakeholderism, which is a key approach when we're dealing with the internet in play. And I love that very much. So pretty much has been said about me in terms of introduction. Yes, I'm a lawyer. I've also been involved in government, and probably that is my starting point. I just wanted to add that while I was in government, being a lawyer and more inclined on liberalizing society, you want to challenge everything, you want to open up everything as a lawyer by virtue of your training, right? I suddenly found myself in one of the times having to defend internet shutdown because I was one of the actors who was involved. I was not speaking from the vantage point of an armchair, talking from somewhere there. I was someone who was confronted with those challenges, and it fell on me as a government actor to really do something in those circumstances, and that I had that opportunity to be on the other side, and I want to speak from that vantage point. So what I wanted to say, taking off from there, is that I am really a believer in regulation. I believe that the internet should be regulated. I don't believe in a laissez-faire internet where anything goes. I believe in an internet that should be regulated. So I'm not really on the fundamentalist side where the internet is some kind of only space that must not be touched. No, I strongly believe that the internet must be regulated. And no surprises at all. I even strongly believe that there could be circumstances where if we have the right information, we must even shut it down. But there must be legal frameworks. We must do it within a framework, no absolutism. So I believe in the internet, that the internet should be shut down if need be, but within some legal framework, as I mentioned. So in terms of my presentation today, right, I was going to talk at the beginning what I had in mind really about the different strategies that have been used across the country. Like, okay, there's been an internet shutdown in the UK, there's been an internet shutdown in Indonesia or this country, and this is how lawyers, these are the strategies that they have used, we have worked on that cases. But one of the interesting things that I actually noticed when I was reading those cases, I kept on coming across the names of my colleague here, Mojirayo. I see that she has been all over litigating these matters, and I thought I should leave that aspect exclusively to you. I hope that during your presentation, you should get to share some of these experiences in terms of the different approaches. So I am going to focus on how to do strategic litigation in terms of the process, in terms of the thinking that goes into it and the steps of how to do it. And then I hope this feeds into what my colleague is going to talk about in terms of concrete experiences and how it's done on the ground. Well, these are really like highlights, testers. It's a subject matter for a full day or a couple of a week kind of training, and I'm hoping that Professor Azrat and his team will follow up on this in terms of looking for relevant actors, the lawyers and other non-legal professionals who get involved in this kind of litigation in terms of trainings. What we're doing here, I'm really scoping and giving the testers and the pointers. So I will start briefly by talking about strategic litigation and how it differs from ordinary litigation. I'll talk about things to consider when you're thinking of engaging in strategic litigation. I'll also talk about steps that one you take and end with a checklist of that. So I will invite right at the beginning here colleagues to be very, very free, and we can interact through the chat box. So you can post questions, you can post comments, an emoji to appreciate a comment by a fellow. You know, it's all welcome. I've just to start this compiled a very, very, very brief what do you call it, list of general resources that one can get to if you want to know more about this strategic litigation. There are organizations like Access Now, Advocacy Assemble that have really done lots of work in this area, and they publicize their resources, and those that are interested can actually go that. I'll ask my colleague here, Enoch, will put general resources in the chat. And I will also invite, if there is anyone among delegates here who has any relevant material, please feel free to also post in the chat box. I have some kind of reference list, some kind of bibliography on this. I think at the end of the webinar, I'll share it with the organizers of the conference, and those that are interested can follow up with them. So I will just want to find out, for starters here, how colleagues feel about the legal system or the judiciary or the legal profession as an arbiter of internet shutdown. So we will briefly do some kind of, I hope my colleague is showing, what do you call it, the slides. So we're briefly going to do some kind of poll survey. I just want to sample here how you depose to this. So I'll ask a couple of questions, really. What you think about the judiciary in your country, whether it's well suited to handle internet shutdowns. And same question again about the legal profession itself, whether you think it's really the arbiter, you know, the go-to kind of institution to do. So we'll start with poll number 1 there. You can just take a couple of seconds to choose some response. Feel free, really. So you can choose 20 seconds and then it will be gone. Yeah, if we're done, we can move to the next one. Okay. Okay. Judiciary in the country is well suited to the. Okay, don't worry. I'm not going to, I'm not going to ask anyone which country. It's okay. Which country you're from is okay. Let's move on to the next one. 23% suited. Okay. Let's move on to the second question. This one is on the legal profession, I think. The second question. I don't see it on my side. Is it showing on the other side? Anyone seeing the second question?
Enoch, it's not showing, Brian.
Okay.
Second, let's go to the second poll, Enoch. Yes, now it's coming.
Here it is. This is in French. How do you?
No. This is not even the question. I think we're having some serious internet issues. And this is one of the reasons why the internet should be shut down here and there, this kind of thing. I'm just kidding you. That's not exactly the question. It was on the legal profession. I don't know what is happening with the technique.
Enoch, this is not the question, Enoch, if you can hear us. It's another question. Appreciation question. Yeah, this one, yeah.
Question number 3, yes, we can just make some option there. We have 20 seconds again. Yeah, I'm sure everyone has had time to fill in. Let's see the responses, Enoch. Okay. So I'm beginning to see some kind of particular trend in terms of attitudes, how the legal system, the judiciary is deposed vis-a-vis this issue of internet shutdowns as the deporter. Let's try question 2 again, Henok.
Ja, aber eben schlechte Arbeitszeiten. Also, du bist halt 5 eigentlich, aber ich kann auch.
Hanok, to the next question.
Ja.
Okay. No. The second one, Henok. Okay,
The second
this.
one.
Yeah, the second one that you skipped. We want to see how people depose to lawyers as the arbiters in this. I mean, they are, okay. Bit of a change there.
No.
Oh, it's something different. It's not the question. Okay. Let's move on. So I also want to find out, and this becomes more and more relevant in light of the responses to the questions that we've just said here. What other alternatives are available in your country for addressing internet shutdowns? Okay, there we've seen this. Henok, thank you so much.
Yes, we have seen this.
Yeah, we can do the fourth one. I want to find out about what other possible avenues we have in terms of arbitrating problems to do with internet shutdowns.
Fourth question, Henok, the fourth question.
We're actually on the fourth now, the fourth question, and want to find out about yeah, so what you do with this one, you I'm sure in the chat board, Henok, the technical fellow, will post some link. You click that link and then you use that code there, you can enter your response and submit. Well, we can do that within the next 2 minutes. So you can use that www.mentee.com, and then you use that code there, you submit your response in terms of just a short response. Even one word will be fine. So we want to find out about alternative mechanisms that are available in the different areas where we are in terms of dealing with the issue of internet shutdowns beyond strategic litigation. Okay, I see some interesting development there. Someone decided to post to the chat, which is perfectly acceptable. Thank you for that. Yeah, if you're finding any challenges with this mentee.com software, you can also post in the chat box. It's equally good. Yeah, I see 1 or 2 responses there. Feel free, really, anything you can think of. Is that problems with the mentee software? So you can use the chat box. So you can just throw a word or 2 in the chat bot. It's perfectly acceptable too.
Yeah, just to remind the audience that you can respond in the chat box if you feel to respond to the question.
Okay.
You have VPN as well as a solution.
Yeah, I see. So I was actually thinking of more of just appealing to the government. Okay. Maybe we can have 1 or 2. Yeah, I see problems with that software. Just 1 or 2 more, and then we can move on to the next one. Perhaps it serves my point, and we can move on from this point. VPN is the only option. Okay, no option. I see that. Or we have a response on the other side again. VPN. VPN is very popular with people. Yeah. So, but really, I think the point here, so the people actually monitor online buyers or bulliers on finding and arresting mis or disinformers or VPN. Okay. No, so thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. But what I really wanted to underscore with this survey here is the issue. This question 4 is the issue of other alternatives beyond strategic litigation. There might actually be methods that work in combination with strategic litigation. So the two, they complement each other. They may tend to bolster each other. But I'm really seeing more and more innovative ideas, and people are more inclined to just use the technology to try and circumvent that. But I was thinking of in terms of challenging those who have the responsibility or at least who have the power to shut down the internet, how we can then want to challenge them, and by challenge, I mean engage with them for a healthy internet ecosystem. We can engage them in such a way that we don't have people shutting down the internet in an arbitrary manner. Well, there are quite a number of interesting responses, as I mentioned here. There's usually a very popular one that we use for engaging with governments. Things like picketing or doing demonstrations. I don't see much of it here, but it's a very popular. I mean, we've had civic society organizing massive engagements in terms of popular, a kind of engagement with the relevant authorities, demanding frameworks, demanding that the whole process be transparent and open. So no, thank you so much for that. I also noted that we've got so much faith in lawyers, that our lawyers do a good job in this. So I think we are very good to move on and talk about what do you call it, strategic litigation now in a couple of things. Enoch, let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, thank you so much. So there's a difference between strategic litigation and the ordinary litigation. And the point here to underscore is the issue that with ordinary litigation, it usually involves individuals, and these individuals could either be a company or a natural person or even a group of persons. And when they approach to court, they seek to gain remedies for specific injuries that they have suffered. With strategic litigation, that sort of private foundation is the base on which strategic litigation is built. With strategic litigation, you then want to go beyond those individual interests to also involve some kind of considerations that touch on the public and the broader interest in a society. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah. So they differ also in terms of goals. So when you approach the court and you are really dealing at the legal, at the level of legality in terms of internet shutdown, you mostly concern yourself with the laid down rules in terms of shutting down the internet, and you want to hold the relevant authorities to the letter and the spirit of the law. Have they not gone beyond what is provided in the law? Have they followed the laid down procedure? Have they done the necessary, consultations if there's such a provision? Or if you say the review stage, you then want to see really whether they've exercised their power within the relevant statute that provides for that. But with strategic goals, there are, as I was saying early on, that you then have this broader societal interests. You have a particular issue in mind, and you want to mobilize awareness in society. You want to trigger a particular policy or a legal change outside of the court, but you are using that particular litigation as a goal to that. There are also issues to do with changing society views on a particular issue, and I think there's a lot of dramatizing of this. We have more and more organizations that pour resources into this kind of litigation. The lot who vigorously push the idea that the internet is inviolable and we must not, touch it. And most of us, when we usually approach the court, even if we don't mention it by word of mouth, but we tend to have this emphasis at the back that no. I've actually met people who believe that no, the internet must never be shut down, whatever the circumstances. And these are some of the goals that you want to push through a strategic litigation as a goal. Let's move on to the next. So in terms of the characteristics of strategic litigation, right, is actually associated with public interest litigation as a matter of rate up, as I was saying. You can actually use it to provide for, the greater social good or protect, fundamental human rights, because they're in the broader social interest anyway. You are looking beyond the interest of an individual client and you want to uphold the interests of society as a whole, often part of a broader advocacy campaign. I think I want to just explain a little bit further the part one. So the context in which it's done is usually a multi-stakeholder kind of framework. Because you are interested in the broader societal interest and because the way the internet is organized is actually a distributed kind of architecture in which authority, resources, power is vested in different actors, some technical, some may be, civic society, some may be, in academia, some may be governments. So you might have broader, advocacy campaigns, and then you want to use strategic litigation as a lever in terms of complementing those other strategies that then run concurrently with it. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. So when you are thinking of doing this strategic litigation, you need to keep at the back of your mind quite a number of things that you must engage with. So there's the issue of a timeline. You want to think about resources. You want to think about expectation management, alignment with other goals. You also want to think about the context in which that a litigation is taking place, as well as the profile of your particular client that is in front of you. Strategic litigation, just by way of further application, tends to take a lot of time. I mean, it spreads over a long period of time. So right at the beginning, as a lawyer, you want to satisfy yourself that this is something that you want to engage in, you have the time, you have the resources, you really have the emotional, the necessary momentum to get into this. Okay, I am sure my colleagues here will share the slides. If you can't read that, I'm sure they can share. I don't have a problem with anyone sharing that. Because of the extended length of time involved, you also want to assure yourself that you have enough resources in terms of human resources as well as financial. Usually, most of the organizations who get involved in this, and my colleagues will speak to that, they'll be working under some kind of grant, and there's usually some organization sponsoring this sort of litigation because there's a lot of money, a lot of financial resources, a lot of time resources, lots of human resources, and a lot of collaboration with other actors. So you really need to be spot on that in terms of organizing. You also need to deal with the issue of expectation management. Usually, right in front there of this broader societal strategic kind of litigation, you have a private litigant who has suffered some kind of harm, and they're using that as a foundation to push the broader societal values. You then need to engage with them in terms of expecting, in terms of explaining and managing expectations, that you are engaged in something that takes a lot of time and that they have to be there through and through, and also in terms of possible expectations. There might be cases where you might lose at the level of the individual, but you score in terms of other goals. These are all things that you need to explain to the client. There's also alignment with other goals. As I was just mentioning, that there are more stakeholders involved, and because of that, there are necessarily more goals again. So you also need to align the individual legalistic kind of goals with the broader advocacy goals. There's also the issue of contest. Internet shutdowns usually happen in situations where the internet, where government might actually have announced like a state of emergency or any such kind of occurrences, or the environment generally in terms of the politics might not actually be conducive. So it's important that you also make provisions and necessary safeguards in those kind of situations. So when you're thinking about strategic litigation, you need to engage with the environment in what is occurrences in the environment and try to adjust to that. You also need to look carefully at your client and determine whether is this a client that you want to really go with in terms of pursuing this strategic litigation. There might be some clients that on the face of it might want at the beginning, but they might fizzle out in the long run. So it's also something that you want to figure out right at the early stages of engagement. Now, this is not really like a closed list, but these are some of the issues that you really want to engage with right at the beginning when you're thinking about a strategic litigation. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. So there are a number of steps. I mean, there are really different approaches to doing strategic litigation. There's no one way, and they don't necessarily move in a linear fashion as I have put it here. But you then want to identify you want to start by identifying your advocacy goals, because strategic litigation is really those kind of goals. So you want to ask yourself questions like, what specific or legal or policy change do you hope to bring about? You also want to think about other changes, such as social or that you hope to promote. You want to identify what legal or other strategies you will accomplish through this goal. So you'll be looking at questions of what strategy is most likely to lead to the desired outcome. You also want to map your strategies and consider the pros and cons of litigation as a strategy. I'm just giving the kind of questions that you want to ask at each and every stage. Also want to choose the right case or cases. Look, much of this turns on the facts, as I was saying. What set of facts really, from among those available to you as a lawyer, are most likely to lead to the desired legal outcome? Are you likely to find a willing client whose circumstances match those facts? I mean, shutdowns, they happen and they affect just about the whole of society. They are so indiscriminate. But you then want to look at a particular client who brings out the facts that facilitate your strategic goals as a lawyer involved in strategic litigation. It's not a random pick. It's something that you have to do carefully. You want to really think about your client, whether your client understands that what you want to involve in strategic litigation is not just for their immediate personal gain, but there are also societal interests involved in that. You also want to map your resources and needs and identify any gaps. So this is really the question of time that I was speaking to earlier on. Strategic litigation can take many years, really. So you want to look at, do you have funding and resources to support the litigation over time? If not, how you can plan for future funding and shortfall. So this is also a good stage to map any potential risk associated with litigation and maybe come up with a risk management plan. You also want to plan your case strategy and build your case. So the case strategy may be similar to a case strategy for a normal litigation, the ordinary litigation. So similar questions will rise, such as what court is the best choice for the case, and what legal arguments would be most effective. But the case study should consider the broader advocacy goals of the litigation. So you need not lose sight of the ultimate and the interest involving in the litigation. You also want to plan your associated communications and advocacy strategy. Look, I just mentioned that the internet is by design. I mean, it involves many stakeholders and many actors, and that when you're engaging in strategic litigation, these actors also have a role to play. So there is the need for broad communication. So you plan for communications and advocacy work that should accompany the case and identify who will lead on that work and what partners can provide. So you also want to think ahead in terms of preparations for a court outcome at various stages. So although court proceedings really can be slow, eventually there's always a decision, and it might come earlier than you expected. So you want to plan your communications and publicity strategy for various outcomes. You also want to do follow-up after the litigation ends. So there's a build-up to this. It might not be involved like a single case. So you might have a strategy that involves a series of them, winning some, losing others, but sending out a clear message to the relevant authorities. So can we move on to the next slide? Yeah, so I have prepared there by way of summing up the take-homes, some checklists for legal strategy, starting with looking at the nature of the shutdown. I mean, shutdown is not a really homogeneous, uniform kind of thing. It involves quite a number of actions that are taken by authorities, and usually authorities complicate this by attributing the shutdown to some other accident. Recently, I'm not sure, but this happened in Kenya, the public engagements between youthful members of Gen Z and the government. There was a bit of some internet blackout there, and the government came out clearly attributing it to some accident. Some submarine colliding with cables or stuff like that. Well, conveniently for them, but of course, there are also civic society organizations that are coming up with independent assessments and attributing that to a shutdown. Shutdown might actually be in a local area, it might cover the whole of the country, and those are the things that you also want to look at it closely before you engage into this. You also want, as I was mentioning, to look at potential litigants and coordinate strategy with civic society and other partners. You also want to identify with rights that have been violated so that you got it right at the foundational level. You also want to develop legal basis, as colleagues were mentioning at the beginning, that we really need some kind of legal basis. And I want to believe there should be some legal framework that is provided. And you want to see really whether the government acted within that possible framework that exists in a particular jurisdiction. You then want to develop legal arguments and begin litigation. Now, I also wanted to mention, on my way out, I'm really at the end now. Usually, by training, of late, we are having really, in most law schools, information lawyers that have trainings in telecommunications, lawyers that have trainings in information and technology and all that. And they might independently rely on their own personal research, but most of the time, most of this technical knowledge might actually reside in other organizations or other individuals outside the law firms. So there's a lot of collaboration between the lawyers and other technical partners in terms of information and all that. So this really scopes out the broader framework within which this strategic litigation goes on. And as I just mentioned, that this is something of a teaser. And my colleagues at the Human Rights Association there and ISO will do well in terms of providing specific trainings to lawyers and other partners to organize, additional training that is built up on foundations like this. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for listening. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, for that very wonderful presentation. I like the sequencing of also the presentations because yours is on approach to strategic litigation, generally focusing on internet, but we'll also hear more from Moji on the specific litigation experience on internet shutdowns. So thank you. Also, you have laid down very important concept, which is the importance of strategic litigation as a concept from ordinary kinds of litigations that we do in court. Its societal and broader, significance. If you look at the history of strategic litigation from Brown versus Board of Education in the States, where desegregation of public schools was made, these were huge, achievements that were made, political achievements, you would say, that were made through litigation. So thank you also for outlining the different, I think, stages and the things that we need to be careful, perhaps, when designing strategic litigation. It was very interesting to hear from the responses that many of the things that we said, some of them we missed them. For example, picketing or demonstrations or lobbying or, to say instead of going to court, you can actually pressure the government through civil, peaceful means. Some kind of outcome may come. So thank you for that. But I'm sure the audience will have also questions, which we will get back after Moji presents her